I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're here at a gas station because this is a day of history. For the first time in Oregon in 71 years, we're able to pump our own gas. Governor Tina Kotek signed House Bill 2426 into law with little fanfare this morning. At the 76th station on East Burnside and 20th in Portland, I met Stephanie Bistline from Tigard as she prepared to pump her own gas for the very first time.
It's an adventure.
Are you worried?
No, I don't. I think that there's an employee shortage, so it probably helps.
Yeah. We've heard from a lot of viewers who are concerned about getting gas on their hands or something exploding. That hardly ever happens, but if you're concerned about that, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, when I saw it on the news, I saw there's only 2 states, Oregon and somewhere else, that do this, so I assumed the other states haven't had a problem, so that's why we're changing.
And she did not have a problem either, for the most part.
Which one do you do?
Satisfy your hunger with our $4 meal deal. Get 2 delicious roller grill items
Is it
and a
going?
20-ounce Coca-Cola for $4.
You have to squeeze the trigger there.
Right on the go.
Fuel your hydration with any 2 1-liter smart water for $4.
After that, she was fine. Nearby,
I like it when they pump gas because it's a safety issue. You know, because if gas spill on you and you're going to a special event,
that's
now
no
that
fun.
ruins your whole day, and then you're smelling like gas.
Yes. Maylin Yuk is from Philadelphia and is like many I've heard from in Oregon, in person and online, who all think that pumping our own gas is something to avoid. The reason we're doing this story is this is a historic day in Oregon today. It's the first day you can pump your own gas.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I don't like pumping my own gas, so I keep my prayers in for Portland,
For all the
for
people
Oregon.
that now have to do it.
Yeah.
Madison Gross is pumping gas for Maylin. He's from New Jersey, the one remaining state where you cannot pump your own gas. But he says there are some exceptions.
In Jersey, they do have some areas that allow you to pump the gas, and we take it. I mean, it's a pleasure to do it, you know. Some states don't.
I like it because it's so much faster, I think.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for the attendant.
I saw lots of people filling up by themselves today. Hudson McCarthy is self-serving for just the second time ever and having no problem. And remember Stephanie Bistline? She got through her first self-serve just fine. And I wasn't able to get to all the stations in the metro area, but I believe there were scenes like these repeated all day long. Lots of people who never pumped their own gas discovered it's not really that hard after all. And if you really, really hate the idea, there is still the option of letting someone from the gas station help you. It's just not required anymore in Oregon. Moving on now, for longtime Portlanders, this video can be tough to watch. The beloved Thompson elk statue ablaze in 2020 during the unrest in the Rose City. Ever since it was taken down in July of that year, we've been getting messages like this one. Linda wrote to us last month, "There are so many of us wondering what's up with our beloved elk, hoping you can get to the bottom of it for us." Well, Linda, we have finally got an update for you tonight. The elk is expected back in its historic home along Southwest Main Street sometime next year. That's according to the Portland Parks Foundation, which played a huge role in making all that happen. It's not going to be cheap, though. But before we get into the cost, let's briefly answer the question, how did we get here? Removed in 2020, the bronze elk was stashed away in a secret storage compartment until its future could be decided. That was not until May of 2022 that the Portland Parks Foundation got a big donation to start working on a feasibility study to bring it back. In that same month last year, Portland City Council faced the question of the elk's future. If you haven't figured it out yet, people really do get pretty emotional about this thing. And as the council was pondering what to do, citizens actually showed up wearing antlers, urging the commissioners to bring the elk back.
It's not only feasible to restore the fountain, but imperative that the city restore it as a clear message of its commitment to revitalizing the downtown and bring a sense of hope and healing to its citizens.
Restoring the historic icon, the the beautiful bronze elk and its storied granite fountain base, and having it adorn the original 1900 site has become a metaphor for advancing downtown's recovery after 2 tempestuous years and a pandemic. Beauty is a necessity in our lives, and this monument is uplifting. Full recovery will come one step at a time, and this is a monumental stride in the right direction.
Now, during that same meeting, the council passed a resolution to, quote, fully restore and return the Thompson Elk Fountain to its original condition and location to the extent feasible. So that's where this process has been publicly since then. But this week, the Portland Parks Foundation says that after some collaboration with Commissioners Dan Ryan, Mingus Maps, and City Arts Program Manager Jeff Hawthorne, they've put together a public-private partnership to get the elk back up 18 months faster than it would have happened otherwise. Here's their plan. Portland Parks Foundation commissioned the design and engineering work, including a seismic upgrade, recirculating pump, and graffiti-resistant coating. They're pitching in $160,000 from donors. Then the city will handle construction, setting aside $1.5 million in tax money in the 23-24 budget. Here are some of the renderings from the Park Foundation feasibility study. One of the architectural groups involved in the project made 3D scans of every piece of the statue and base to determine how many pieces can be salvaged and how many they need to basically build again. They say there's still a lot to be determined, but the worst case scenario is that about 18 out of the 50 pieces will need to be refabricated, along with a new slab for the fountain. One interesting thing in the study to note about the original statue, you might not know it was secured by the base with a single bolt, just one bolt. So you can imagine why there were safety concerns in 2020. The study says the new design provides for, quote, more resilient connection. So let's hope so. As for that circulating pump, it's apparently required by City Council in an effort to conserve water. So there's that. But when news about the elk's return was first announced yesterday, at least one viewer named Barb had this to say. I was blown away when I saw on the news that the city of Portland has allocated $1.5 million to restore the elk statue. Was a breakdown provided as to the cost? How could it possibly cost that much? Wow. Great point, Barb. I thought the exact same thing. And you can bet no other news show in Portland is going to break down the cost of this, but we are. Let's dive in. Here's a look at what the expected costs are going to be. Just rehabbing and reinstalling the fountain, according to the Parks Foundation feasibility study, that's nearly $1.2 million in construction, and over $100 grand in what they're calling soft costs. Those are things like permits and fees. You got to be kidding me. That totals more than $1.3 million. But let's take it a step further and break down the bulk of that money. The $1.2 million for construction, well, they estimate $120 grand for site improvements. Site development, meaning stonework, will run close to $900,000. $84,000 for the fountain and the water supply. That's a nice fountain. Nearly $25,000 for electrical and $118,000 for the site prep. But that's not all. There are plans to redevelop the area around the statue to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists. The street improvements come with a price tag of over $640,000. It includes things like asphalt lanes for cars and bikes, paving the area around the elk, and things like textured pavement bands. So, yeah, they're taking this opportunity to do way more than just put the statue back in there with more than one bolt. Add up all the costs for the statue, the fountain, and the surrounding roads, the grand total $1.9 million, which again is just an estimate. But for those of you who have impatiently waited for the elk's return, the wait continues, but at least now there's a plan in place to get it done next year. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Are you happy the elk is coming back? Are you worried about the price tag? Maybe a little bit of both? Doesn't matter, just let us know. Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, Congress is on recess right now, and that means that a lot of members are back in their home states talking with constituents. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden stopped by KGW this week to talk with Laurel Porter on Straight Talk.
Later this week, you're going to be in Eastern Oregon, and you're working on legislation that is called groundbreaking because you're bringing together a lot of different stakeholders, ranchers, small businesses, tribes, environmental groups, hunters, and it's for something called the Malheur Community Empowerment for the Oahe Act. So what is that, and why is it groundbreaking?
The Oahe back east is known as Oregon's version of the Grand Canyon. It is really spectacular. And for decades now, something like 4 decades, there's been fighting back and forth about trying to come up with a management plan. And what we announced after years worth of work, the ranchers came to see me, basically asked me to get involved. We have now a major piece of legislation that's backed by ranchers and conservationists and small businesses and farmers. And what it's going to do is it's going to ensure that the ag way of life is maintained. The farmers always wanted to know, oh, you're going to come up with some big thing and we're all going to be out of business. We maintain the ag way of life, and that includes some smarter policies with respect to grazing rights, which was very important to them. And we've protected a significant portion of treasures. And I sometimes pinch myself when I think that this came together. But this is going to be a great model for how to manage lands, and particularly bring together agriculture folks and conservationists for a win-win.
You can check out the entire conversation coming up next at 7 o'clock right here on KGW, or anytime on the KGW YouTube channel. Still to come on the story. It's no secret that deadly fentanyl overdoses are on the rise here in Portland and across the Pacific Northwest. We're going to hear from 5 mothers who share a bond that few parents can imagine: the death of a child. What they say needs to be done to protect young adults from fentanyl. That's coming up when the story returns. Now to a powerful story about the growing fentanyl crisis in the Pacific Northwest. Tonight we're going to hear from 5 moms, 5 who lost a child to a fentanyl overdose as those deaths have surged to new heights. Here's a look at the latest data from Portland police on overdose deaths. Nearly 90 back in 2020, and then it jumped to 135 the next year in 2021, and then to 159 in all of 2022. But look at the numbers so far this year, 151 in less than 7 months. Police expect that number to be around 300 by the end of the year. Last month, we showed you the toll that overdose calls are taking on first responders. In fact, Portland Fire Station 1 downtown averaged 10 overdose calls every single day in the month of June. But it's not often that we get to hear from families who are grieving loved ones gone from an overdose. Jake Wittenberg from our sister station in Seattle introduces us to parents trying to turn heartbreak into action.
What a beautiful picture.
And she was a beautiful girl, inside and out.
This is Sophia. Trey, my beautiful Trey.
This is Brilliant Lawson Lynch.
Lucas is my younger son.
Well, he was my firstborn. He was the best big brother.
She was witty, she was funny, really kind.
Lucas was kind. Lucas had lots of friends.
He was a musician, so that's why I brought this picture, because he was in his element here.
She was 20 in this picture. This was taken just a few days before she passed away.
I lost her 6 days after she turned 18.
He was 21, so.
I would not think of Lucas being a depressed guy.
I never imagined that we'd lose her first.
He got a Percocet from an acquaintance, and it was not a Percocet. It was completely fake with fentanyl and fillers, and he died in his sleep.
And my husband and I were both, what is fentanyl?
How does it feel to be around other moms like this?
It's like, they're the only ones that know how we feel.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're in this new club now that you never wanted to be in.
Yeah.
It's a horrible club, but you find bonding.
5 mothers, just a fraction of the families left struggling to make sense of it. Their children, Brilliant Lynch, Sophia Humphreys, Trey Schweigert, Jalen Penix, and Lucas Bier, all thought they were experimenting with a single dose of the painkiller Percocet, but in fact the pill was unknowingly laced with the synthetic opioid fentanyl.
But I don't get the sense that any of your children had a drug problem.
She was doing great, and this was just, a moment.
He got on Snapchat, ordered a Percocet. They brought it to his house, gave it to him, and he died that night because it was straight fentanyl. That was the only thing in his system.
Yeah, same for my daughter. When they did the toxicology, there was so much in there that the prosecutors thought it was an error. There was enough to kill, I think, 36 people or more.
Like 2 years ago, meth was still #1, but now meth is not even there. It's just all fentanyl.
Lab tests now reveal 6 of 10 fake prescription pills flooding our communities are laced with a lethal dose of fentanyl, 100 times more powerful than morphine. Just a small pinch hidden inside can cause an overdose.
People hear overdose and they picture someone in a back alley with a needle hanging out of their arm, dying because they took too much drugs. This is a poisoning, so it needs to be called what it is.
This is the most serious threat that we faced, and I've been on with the DEA for 25 years.
DEA Special Agent Jacob Galvan says the problem starts with drugs being shipped from China to Mexico, where the drug cartels then flood it up the West Coast.
All they care about is making money. They want to drive addiction. The more people they can get addicted, the more drugs that they can sell, and that's all they care about. And they don't care who they harm, they don't care who they kill.
But the poison pills keep coming. The DEA says drug busts are up 146% today. And last year in the Northwest alone, agents seized 8.9 million deadly doses of fentanyl.
So you've seized enough fentanyl to kill every person in the state of Washington?
Yes.
That's terrifying.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yeah, and that's why we need to get this message out.
He says schools play an important role in getting the message out there. The Tahoma School District in Maple Valley is one district sounding the alarm to do more.
I'm seeing the families want education because they're worried about their kids.
Liz Thilbert is the district's new wellness coordinator. Her job is to connect the schools and city leaders to keep families on alert about the way one pill can kill and streamline resources for mental health and substance abuse. Congressional leaders have also zeroed in on this community to help prevent teens from making that one mistake. And staff in middle school and high schools are fully stocked and trained on how to use the overdose reversing drug Narcan, although it hasn't been needed yet.
We're going to work with parents, we're going to work with our community, because this is a community issue. It's not just a school or a community or a parent, it's all of us together working to create change.
Do you think the schools are doing a good job?
I think they're starting to, yeah. And we would always like to help them.
I think education needs to start even as young as middle school.
Yeah.
And start telling the kids about it right away.
Yeah, it needs to come from all directions. And I think I'd personally like to see a statewide mandated awareness campaign. Start those conversations, because there are drug dealers in schools.
What should they be watching for?
And parents need to know that it can happen to them. Even if you're a helicopter mom, your kid will still go and experiment with drugs. And some of these kids are dying just from experimenting one time.
5 moms still struggling with the pain and left wondering if change will ever come.
I want to help another family not go through what, we're going through. I have to do something.
That was Jake Wittenberg reporting. And while that story featured a small part on opioid education in King County, Washington, there is a program in Beaverton School District that's getting some big-time attention now. Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici plans to write a bill to mandate the program all over the country. We'll tell you more about what could become a national model of success in our own backyard when the story returns. Back now to our fentanyl coverage. Congress could soon be looking at a bill that touches on a program that started in Beaverton. The school district there created a fentanyl education plan in 2021 to teach students about the dangers of the drug and counterfeit pills. Now, Oregon Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici says she's going to write a bill granting funding to schools across the country to implement similar education. Thomas Schultz has our story.
Why is it important to be aware of the risks of drugs being manufactured with fentanyl and other substances?
For the past couple of years, middle and high schoolers in Beaverton have received a different kind of education.
This is not somewhere far away. This is here.
Every year, learning about the dangers of fentanyl in counterfeit pills.
We think it is critically important for students to hear this message at this moment in time.
With fentanyl, if you make a mistake, you die.
The Fake and Fatal campaign was started after several Beaverton students died in the 2020-21 school year from fentanyl poisoning. One former student was Cal Epstein. His parents, John and Jennifer, found him in his bedroom one winter morning with blue pills nearby. They were planning to get together with family soon to celebrate the holidays.
This was something that we were not expecting.
John Epstein says his son purchased oxycodone to help with anxiety. Instead, Cal got fentanyl.
He didn't know about the dangers of counterfeit pills and fentanyl.
Since Beaverton began its Fake and Fatal campaign, there has been no report of any students dying from fentanyl poisoning.
Our teachers and those who develop the curriculum have made a point of trying to stay abreast of all the changes in the drug landscape so that what we're teaching in the classroom can be as current as possible.
Federal officials want to take that program and implement it nationwide.
It has to be all of us on deck trying to do this.
U.S. Secretary of Human and Health Services Javier Becerra says the dangers of fentanyl is just getting worse. He says the drug is 50 times deadlier than heroin.
This is an epidemic that everybody needs to worry about, everybody needs to educate themselves on.
To prevent more students, like Cal, from losing their lives far too soon.
Our family's not the same as it was, 2.5 years ago. And it won't ever be the same again.
Thomas Schultz, KGW News.
Oregon recently passed legislation mandating that every school system have similar opioid education that goes into effect in the 24-25 school year. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember the story, our collective story? That never ends. I hope you have a great weekend pumping your own gas, maybe. Stick around now for Straight Talk with Laurel Porter coming up next. Hope you do have a great weekend. Get out and move your bodies as well. I'll see you right back here, 6:30 on Monday.